Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to our show. We have gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the multiverse, two of the nerdiest geeks to be found. We proudly present the professor and her geeky girlness herself, Ace. And now it's time. GeekyKOOL presents Professor and Ace.
Hey everybody, welcome to GeekyKOOL presents Professor and Ace, episode 84. Woo! And I want to thank AJ for doing a great job hosting it last week, and Ashley being on, and
wonderful audition.
You guys rocked it. So
we were like trying to figure out what we were going to talk about, and I was like, we both love Ghibli. Let's just do Ghibli because I could talk about Ghibli all day long. So.
Well, and that was a really good topic because I think that just kind of adds to our whole geekdom as a whole, and I appreciate it. And I've seen some of those movies, but I've honestly not seen them all. So,
and Lex is here, so Lex is starting. She's a new Ghibli fan.
So yeah, well, and I picked that up. From her. She's new into it, but she's really into certain ones.
Yeah.
The witch one, and then
the witch, and that's like that's a totally different style. It doesn't feel like a Ghibli, but she loves it. So I'm like, yeah, you can talk about it. She's like,
right. Yeah, of course, most definitely. Well, tonight we wanted to talk about a series that's been out for a couple weeks, and of course I've been off because I was at youth camp last week, and I do again appreciate you guys picking up my slack there. But wanted to talk about this series. Because it's a series that I love. I consider it the best series on streaming or television altogether. I just love this show. And it is Stranger Things.
Oh, it's so blurry. Such a good, I love it.
Is it blurry?
Yeah, it's really blurry. But that's okay.
Yep, sorry guys. Sorry for a blurry picture. I was trying to find one quickly to add in. And you've got one... And we'll pull yours up when you want to talk about it. Yeah, I like that. I love that you now have power to be able to do things because
I know it makes it so much easier. One of us could be doing something while we're talking.
Right. It's one of those things where StreamYard did not offer having someone be able to be an extra admin with you until the last month or so, and so they just added that, and I'm glad we're able to use this feature because I think it's going to make things a lot better for us. So.
Oh yeah, and it's just going to be better because if one of us can't be in there, then the other one can, and
right.
Or if I'm going to be late or you're going to be late, we can go ahead and start. And
we sure can, most definitely.
Yeah.
So, Stranger Things Season 4 dropped a couple weeks ago, as I mentioned. Part 1. Season 4, Part 1. I think there's only 2 episodes in Part 2.
Part 1 is episodes 1 through 7. Part 2 is episodes 8 and 9.
Which is a weird way to do it, because you would think they would split it in half. Now, 8 and 9 are both long episodes.
Yes.
And there's a lot for them to wrap up in 2 episodes. So
there is. I feel like I feel like they could have done 8 and 9 by the length that it looks like they're going to be, and all the stuff that they still have going on. I feel like they could have made it 4 episodes, but they wanted to get it to the 2. Which is one of the great things about streaming sites is that they can do that. They can like when you're on network television, you can't do that.
Now you get like 46 to 48 minutes per episode because of all the commercials.
Yeah.
And that's all you get unless there's some sort of special arrangement. But so streaming does allow you to be able to breathe and have longer episodes or shorter episodes even. So, yeah. Right. So, I know you've watched all 3 of the previous seasons.
Yes, I have.
And so have I. And I know you're a fan. May not be as big of a fan as I am.
I'm not. I don't think it's like... I feel like it's the best series on Netflix.
Sure.
But I don't know if I think it's the best series streaming.
Right. And I get that.
But I do love it. And I think that I love it because, I was an 80s kid. You were an 80s kid. it is set in the 80s. And so this one, season 4, is set in 1986, which is 9 months after the mall incident at the end of season 3.
Right.
So, it's the first time we've seen the group split up, and we have multiple locations that we deal with.
Right.
Instead of just Hawkins, we have 4 throughout the thing. We have four separate locations that are very intricate in the storytelling, and they're not like close together. They're like 4 states in another country, and you have all that. So,
right, exactly.
But I think it's really cool because it's also we're so used to seeing the American 80s through them, but we go to Russia. If anybody hasn't, hi Mandy. If anybody hasn't seen it yet, we're gonna have spoilers. I'm sorry.
Yep. Just turn it down so you can't hear it. Just keep watching, but just turn it down if you've not seen it. It's
Russia, but to see Russia in the 80s, like to see what they were obsessed with American culture.
Right.
I thought was a really interesting.
Well, and how they're sneaking in peanut butter from the U.S.
I know. And it was funny. It was so funny.
And of course, you have Russians as bad guys, which is a big thing in the 80s because, we honestly, as an 80s child, felt like Russia could nuke us at any moment. They hated us so much. Nuclear war could break out any moment. We could all die. So I don't know how. I know we were close to war a few times, but I don't know if it was quite that sense. But that was always the sense I got as a kid, is that Russia hates us.
Well, here's the thing. It's a very common theme in the 80s movies.
It is.
Rocky defeated the Russian. Like there's different things. Red Dawn.
Yep.
Like literally Russia invaded America in that movie. So I like that they took this to Russia.
Right.
I feel like it is keeping with the times that it's set in.
Right.
That we were so afraid of Russia. It's like basically the 60s had the Cold War, also Russia, but Cuba as well, the Cuban Missile Crisis, all of that. But it extended from the 60s into the 80s until Reagan and Gorbachev came to that agreement.
Right.
And so I really like that they kind of made Russia not necessarily the bad guy, but one of the bad guys.
Right.
Because there's several bad guys in this season.
There are. There's several things going on.
There's several monsters in this season.
Yeah.
Which is a fun departure from previous seasons. We'd see little monsters and stuff, but there are several bad guys, like what I'd call bosses.
Including an American who thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, there's and that's the other thing about it is you have spy and espionage kind of thing going on with the Russians, but you see it on the American side too.
Right.
And everything. So I really enjoyed the setting of it. Just so everybody knows, there are, like I said, 4 major settings. You have Hawkins, which, you can't have Stranger Things without that town.
Right.
But you also have, you go to a couple places, but you have California, which is where Joyce, Will, and Elle moved. So you get to see their life in California.
And boy, life is not fun.
No, especially for Elle. And then you have Russia. You have a Russian prison, but you also see Russian towns. Alaska is a little bit in there, but you don't really get to see much of Alaska except for an airplane hangar. And then you get to go to Utah.
Yep.
the half the gang gets to finally meet Susie.
Right.
If you guys don't remember Susie, Susie's Dustin's girlfriend. She's the geeky nerd. She's the computer nerd. Totally would have been me.
And so pulled off the oh gosh, what was the name of the movie now? Matthew Broderick movie, computer. Do you want to play a game? Yes. Do you not remember?
Are you talking about War Games?
War Games. That's it. Yes, they so pulled off War Games at the very beginning of it.
Yeah.
They referenced it with the whole hacking into the school, the school to change a grade.
Yeah, because Dustin is getting a D in Latin. Latin in the 80s. My school did not teach Latin in the 80s.
Mine did not either. But if you've got a pit to the other side in your city, maybe
you've got to teach some like ancient languages.
Right, exactly.
And then you have a silo in Nevada that doesn't come in for a few episodes, but it is a huge part of this season.
Right.
But those are our 4 main locations, and with Utah just being a little blip of one, but I really liked the extremes of each of these locations. I think it added to it a lot.
I agree. Well, and things weren't just split in the different locations. You also have the group splitting kind of on friend groups a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With Lucas playing basketball and trying to be a popular kid.
Well, it's so true to like growing up. Will kind of feels like a third wheel.
Yep.
Because of Mike and Ellen. He did last season as well, but this season it's more because they live in California. So Mike goes to visit them at one point. And so they live in California, and Mike is like obsessed with Elle, and Will feels kind of, left out.
I'm sorry, Will. He's going to make out with Elle, not with you. Sorry, that's the way it goes.
I know. I kind of get the feeling that Will has a crush, but that's okay. It's okay. But no, you have the group splitting off. You see Steve being jealous of the relationship Dustin has, which is so ironic and funny.
Right.
He's
Season 2, I mean.
I don't want to babysit again. And he says that a lot, by the way.
I know, right?
but at the same time, you see this true friendship, like he's really respecting Dustin as a person a lot more. And Dustin and Mike and Lucas, until he joined the basketball team, but he's still part of the team, they're all part of this new group in Hawkins called the Hellfire Club. I know. And they gave us, in this season, one of my favorite new characters.
Yeah.
Every give you a new character. Unfortunately, that new character tends to die. I'm hoping they don't do that with him. But you can go ahead and pull his picture up.
Oh. Well, you can do it. You got it right there.
I can. I'll do it. Oh.
Yeah. There you go.
It disappeared.
There you go. Eddie Munson.
Okay, so he was an anomaly for me at the beginning when they introduced him. I was not sure where it was going to go.
Right.
And he looks like he would be the bully. He looks like he would be the freak. Like he's the freak. But he's really just a nerd who's into music.
Right.
Like he's a nerd, but he's also into music. And so
who happens to sell drugs aside?
Well, I mean, it's the middle 80s.
Right.
And he's into heavy metal.
Yeah.
So it's kind of they're playing that up.
Oh, right. Most definitely.
But they're also giving you like this chance to see the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
I read somewhere that he's based off one of the Memphis 3.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure which one. Probably Damon, but that's what I read, and it kind of makes sense to me. Like, people are scared of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's the freak. He, people don't know what to think of him. He looks like he's back in the 80s. There was the whole Dungeons and Dragons was the devil's game. It led to Satanism. There was a huge, like, it's pool in the United States where people were so scared of any religion or any fantasy or anything that was against the norm that it became evil. And so he plays heavy metal music.
Right.
He has long hair. He wears dark clothes and a leather jacket, sometimes a denim jacket. But, he just looks not like your typical jock or preppy kid. And he plays D&D and has a D&D game that's called Hellfire Club. Like, he's kind of asking for people to think he's a freak.
Right. He is, and he's playing to the stereotype of the time. So I had friends like this that intentionally would look a certain way to try to scare people because they didn't fit in, and they didn't want to fit in with the crowd. And I actually became very much like that also. But, they wanted to look like they were part of the outside. Right. And so you had that. So the long hair was part of representing that. You had, the heavy metal and then all that. And, the Hellfire Club just adding to the satanic panic of the time, which was a huge thing for certain people. That if you played Dungeons and Dragons, or if you listened to rock music, or if you whatever, you were going to become demon possessed or become some sort of great killer, that the cult was after you. And there were occult things that happened, but usually not related to these things. Yeah. Most of us that played Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s, or even today, we are playing just because it's a fun way to, take a role and act it out while you're rolling dice. And
it's a fantasy game.
Yeah, it is.
To become a hero. And let's face it, as nerds and geeks, we love superheroes. We love... We love...
The redheaded Barbara there.
I know. And it literally says, don't tell Batman I'm looking for bad boys. But we love that idea. That's why we watch these shows. That's why we read comics. That's why we do these things, is because we want to see or get into becoming the superhero. Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games like that, which are way more common now, gave nerds the opportunity to fight a bad guy, fight a bad guy. Also before video games took extreme hold. We had some video games, but it wasn't like now.
Yeah, Pac-Man didn't really help you fight bad guys.
No,
just eat ghosts.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, you had some video games. You had Zelda. In '86, Zelda was a thing. Mario Brothers. You had your big bosses, but this is a way of you fighting against them and you feeling like you fought against them.
Right.
So these are precursors to the video games that are out now, like the fantasy video games that are out now. Without games like Dungeons and Dragons and those role-playing games, they wouldn't have, I don't think, got there as fast.
Right. I agree. Well, and for those that don't know, D&D especially, but role-playing games are back, being very popular. Yep. It's interesting in a society where we've become a lot more isolated, don't talk in person as much to people. This is the way to reconnect, especially for geeks and nerds.
I want to do games.
I know.
I do. I just don't have time.
You gotta make the time.
That's a terrible. I thought about doing one shots, like a whole bunch of one shots.
You should.
But yeah, so now that we've kind of laid, I mean, D&D is part of all the seasons.
Right. So we're in season 1. Yep.
But this season really takes D&D into that mainstream.
Yeah.
Where society as a whole was starting to notice it.
Mm-hmm.
That satanic panic.
Oh, and I remember that very well.
Oh yeah,
Mid-80s.
it was
Oh yeah.
pure evil if you were playing D&D. Oh my gosh, it can possess you. Like I remember going to church, and I played D&D because from the age
I
of
did
like,
too.
Yeah, from the age, I think I was like 4th grade or 5th grade. I played D&D from that age up, so I was very much like the boys from Stranger Things.
Right.
But I was a girl, so that made me different. But I remember going to church, and our youth pastor was up, and he was speaking, and he was talking about how D&D and things like that are gateways to hell, and they open you up to demonic possession, and like this was literally what he was. And I'm like, I just roll dice and play.
Right. Yeah, I don't really, cut things open and use its blood for a spell. We just say, I'm going to throw a fireball. I mean, it's not.
Right. Or even if you do that, it's not you actually doing it. It's just you saying you're going to do that as your character.
Right. But what I'm just saying is, but you don't do that in real life. You're not sitting around the D&D table with a dead animal slicing it open or whatever.
That would be terrifying. I would be so sad.
That would be. Now that's not. I don't want to LARP that way. That's bad LARPing.
No.
So talking about D&D with it, because there's a couple of big scenes. The battle scene at the end of episode 1 that went right along with the basketball game.
Right.
And the music just hyping you up, and they're fighting Vecna, who's this big bad, for those that don't know, like a really big bad, who's very powerful.
That wasn't episode 1.
I thought it was at the very end of episode 1. They're the big battle.
I think it was episode 2. Hold on, let me see. I wrote notes.
Because you've got the basketball championship going on at the same time, where you have Lucas's sister joining him. Who I love that character, by the way.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh my gosh, what's her name? I wrote it down. I always forget her name. And I don't know why I forget her name, because she's in every season.
She didn't come to season. Well, maybe you're right. Yeah.
She's just that annoying little sister who's like,
right.
My friend Tiffany. Remember? She's like,
okay, yeah, I do remember that. Oh wow.
Yeah. You're right. I'm wrong.
That's a first.
But yeah, I mean, we could talk about each episode. First episode's called Hellfire Club. Chapter 1, Hellfire Club.
But by the way, do you know where the word Hellfire or the term Hellfire Club comes from?
No.
It's actually a super villain group from X-Men comics. Really used, popular with the run in the 80s, where the Hellfire Club was instrumental in helping get Jean Grey to delve in deeper to her abilities, which of course led to the Dark Phoenix saga.
So that does not surprise me, and I know that, I just didn't put 2 and 2 together, that I felt like Eddie would be a X-Men.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's a big X-Men fan. Yeah.
He's totally an X-Men. And no, it's like I feel like he feels like he's a mutant himself.
Right, exactly.
I think that's a true statement. But we open up with the show with actually, the episode 1 has a scene in it that's very traumatic, especially considering what has just happened in the United States.
Yeah, what's been happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, but the
last month has really been bad.
Yeah. But you get to see a flashback of Elle when she was still in the lab and before she escaped, and you see all these children murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And you see Papa, Dr. Brenner, coming in and looking at Ellen going, what did you do?
Right.
And that's how that. And then Elle is having these dreams, memories, kind of thing. Because Elle does not have her powers. If anybody remembers, at this end of season 3, Elle has lost her powers. She no longer has them. They think, oh, they're going to come back really soon. It's just you're tired. You know, like they kind of hint about that at the end of season 3. This is 8 months later, and she still doesn't have her powers. Her, Will, and Joyce are living in California, where Owens has placed them for safety, for Elle's safety. And Jonathan's there, of course, too. He's there helping and trying to graduate and do that sort of thing. He's got a new friend.
Who I love, by the way.
Kyle is hilarious.
He's like pizza buddy.
He's like a surfer, stoner pizza dude who's like Native American. Like, he's just he reminds me of Mikey from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes, very much so.
Like, his whole character, I feel like they're like, let's make Mikey a Native American teenage boy in California. Like, it's very much
that. Man.
Even the way he talks reminds me of Mikey.
Oh, yeah.
So you have them living there, and, you know, they all think Hopper's dead. Joyce still has hope, of course, you know, with her blossoming relationship with Hopper the last season. And she gets a package in the mail from Russia. And she calls Murray because she instinctively knows this has something to do with Hopper.
Right. Well, why else would you be getting a package from Russia with Russian stamps and all of that? But for those who don't remember, Murray is the weird guy starting in, season 2, where they go to visit him, and he knows kind of how the government works and has all the conspiracy theories. And in the first season, in season 2, he's only in there for like an episode. And then last season, he went along with the ride to try to help the Russian guy that they'd captured. And then this season, it's a much bigger role for him.
Oh, it's a huge role.
Yeah.
And I really like that they've expanded it because he is funny.
Right.
But also funny in that 80s cop way. Does that make sense? Like,
no, completely makes sense.
Movie's cop who thinks he's more of a badass than he is, but he actually is a badass, but you don't believe he is. He looks so ridiculous.
Yeah. Sorry I didn't answer. I was in my martial arts lessons again.
Getting my black belt and martial arts, you know, like, and you just think he's BSing you like the whole time.
Right. Or he thinks he's really bad, but like he's beating up a group of kids or something. You know, like yeah.
You see him like with 7-year-olds, like.
Right, exactly.
I don't know what your mind does, but so of course she's stayed close to him after Hopper died, and enough that she calls him and asks for help, and he comes out to California. There's a doll inside of the package. And
well, she's on the phone with him originally. So what to do with the doll?
Oh my God!
There's this Russian doll. What do I do with it?
It could be a bomb.
Do you have something heavy that you can drop on it? You're like, what?
It's like, do you have something you could drop? But and rope. And I was like, when I was watching that, I was like, why is he asking her if she has rope? Just drop something heavy on it. But it's because he's afraid it's a bomb.
Right.
Because they closed the gate, and the Russians really wanted the gate so they could get to the Upside Down in the last season. And so he thinks the Russians are after Joyce and Eleven and Will because they are the closest things to how they can understand the Upside Down. They're the most. They've actually been there. They've lived through it. Will live through it for how long in season 1? You know,
right.
And so he's just really concerned that this is a bomb. So he has her place this doll out in her yard and a rope with something heavy, and her neighbors are like watching. And
I love the neighbors with the little girls. Mom, what's she doing?
Just come on, honey. Just come on.
Yeah.
which is also very 80s. It's a very 80s.
Very much so, yes.
But yeah, so you see that. You see they get a note basically saying Hopper's alive. In the doll, there's like
and it's a note that looks like it's a Ramson note from some sort of Psycho. I mean, it's wild.
It so is, but it's totally fitting that whole.
It is, yeah.
Espionage kind of thing. So Murray comes out. They're of course going to pay the ransom to get Hopper back. Like they want him back. While this is all going on, Eleven is being bullied at school by a cheerleader. I can't think of her name right now.
Yeah, one of the popular girls, of course.
Yeah, Angela. Yeah, she's getting bullied at school by Angela, like really bad.
Right.
And it's that whole Mean Girls thing.
Definitely.
Will is trying to be supportive. Jonathan's off smoking pot with his new friend Argyle. It's a thing.
Argyle, man.
So that's your episode 1 in California. Episode 1. What?
Sorry, I was doing 11 at the end.
I know.
It's like, hey, Angela.
Yeah, and she really wants to defend herself, but she can't. She doesn't have powers, and she doesn't have enough social skills to defend herself other ways.
Not at all. We've always known that she had some social problems, partially because she didn't grow up with normal kids.
Right.
But this episode really highlights Elle's social inadequacies.
It does.
You really kind of see she just is having a hard time figuring it out.
Well, and she has Will, but she really doesn't have a support system like we had in Hawkins. And so, there she had a whole group of friends. Like last season, she became friends with Max and Robin was in the mix, and she had Steve. So she had Steve and Nancy and Jonathan, who were older and were protective of her. She had Mike, who was in love with her and protective of her, and then Dustin and Lucas. They were like super protective. Like she had all these people protecting her.
Right.
Now she's like in this new place, and she doesn't have people protecting her, and her social cues are not
at all.
Not like she doesn't understand it, and she's lying to Mike about it. She understands how bad it is, but she doesn't want him to know. So she's made up a whole life, which I found really interesting because of the whole friends don't lie.
Right.
Like her huge thing last season was friends don't lie.
Well, that changes.
Now she's living a life of lies.
Right.
But and then in Hawkins, you have the Hellfire Club, you have Mike, Dustin, and Lucas, but Lucas is kind of trying to find his own way. He's really good at basketball, so he's been playing basketball, even though he's on the bench because he's younger, and that's kind of what they do to you.
Right.
But he's making some jock friends, and so you get to see Lucas's sister though step into the D&D world.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you were talking about with the basketball game and the D&D game.
At the same time.
Yes.
Kind of mirroring each other. But Lucas's sister walking in with the American flag around her neck.
So beautiful.
And then we've got Eddie grilling her. It's like, what? Are you a first level dwarf or something? And then she just rattles it at him. I'm a 14th level. I forget what all it was, but like, whoa, you go, girl.
And he's like, girl knows her stuff. And here's the thing, I really relate to her.
Yeah.
At that point, because you have Mike and Dustin. Lucas has chosen to go to the basketball game instead of the D&D game. That's why
it's a big ending for both. So it's the final state championship for basketball, and it's the final. This is where everything for their whole everything with D&D has come to this head, and so it's this big final match.
Yeah, and it's best
Vecna.
I can't say that. Vecna. But
the hand of Vecna.
Right. I really relate to her because she was a girl.
Right.
Who played D&D. And you know how many times I walked into a D&D game and I was younger, a lot of the times younger than the people I was playing with. And they would give me that look like.
Right. What are you bringing here? It's not Barbies.
Are you sure you're in the right place kind of look? And but she owned it. She has way more like self-confidence than I do. She's like, nope, here's what we're gonna do. It's such a high note for her and her brother that night because
right
wins the championship game.
Right, makes the last shot. Yeah, wins the game.
Amazing, and she beats the boss.
Right.
So you have that going on, and you think to yourself, "Wow, they're going to end this first episode wonderfully." I was like, "Yes!" And then I remember Chrissy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Chrissy's dating the head basketball player. I don't know what it would be called. It's not like quarterback, but he's like the captain. The captain of the basketball team, Jason. She's a cheerleader, and she's been having these horrible, like middle of the day dreams. To kind of get you it. When I watched this, the first thing I thought was, "Oh my gosh, they're doing Nightmare on Elm Street."
Yes, they were.
Because it's very much like somebody invading your subconscious to hurt you.
Yep.
And working off of your fears. And you see that with Chrissy. And Chrissy wants to numb it.
Right.
And so she goes to Eddie, who sells drugs. Her and Eddie start actually, I think if it would have been able to be allowed, I think her and Eddie would have actually been friends.
Right. Right.
But she goes to his house after the big game to buy drugs from him, and the big bad, the big bad, the Freddy Krueger of this season kills her.
Right.
And kills her in such a Freddy Krueger way.
Very, very reminiscent of the first kill of Freddy with, and I forget what the blonde's name is in Nightmare on Elm Street, that basically picks her up, but when you look in the real world you can't see him, and Eddie can't see him, but watches her body get mangled as is being held up. Yeah.
So I would have to ask Shpoo this, but I think that the blonde's name in Nightmare on Elm Street was Chrissy.
That might be true. Oh. By the way, 1984, Nightmare on Elm Street. So for those that didn't know, big thing in the 80s.
Right. And so you have this weird Nightmare on Elm, like she's up on the ceiling and she's distorted. Her whole body gets distorted. Her eyes get like gouged out.
Right,
like,
right.
It is disturbing.
Yeah. Very disturbing. Very much a Nightmare on Elm Street kind of disturbing. Yeah.
As you should. You should run. Like,
yeah. If something is doing that to her, I'm out.
Oh, yeah. And he already knows he's the freak. He already knows he's going to get blamed for like in his
right.
He's going to get blamed for this.
Right.
That's your episode 1.
Right.
So much happens in these episodes.
I know. And we don't have to go through all of them, but that's a very good intro. I mean, because
much happens. But no, it's like it's great. And I do like that is your entrance into the whole fact that this is really going to be a Nightmare on Elm Street kind of.
Yeah.
And I picked this up in episode 2 as it started, and Nancy shows up, and she's now investigating Chrissy's death, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Nancy. Right. Nancy is Freddy.
Right. Nancy's the one. Yes.
Nancy's the last girl.
Right.
He's the girl who survives. And I'm like, and I'm so excited for the last 2 episodes because it gets to a point where Nancy is the one who is figuring out a lot of this that's going on.
Right.
She has a connection with this a little bit more than she has in the past seasons. I just think it's a very, very Nightmare on Elm Street themed.
Right.
And when I say Nancy has a connection with it, so she's now investigating Chrissy's death because she wants to be a reporter. She works for the school newspaper. They just did this story on the, like, oh, we won the state championship, and like head cheerleader dies in gruesome death in trailer of School Freak.
Right,
like,
right.
Night.
Well, in fact, her kind of sidekick friend is like, well, I guess this headline won't work.
Yeah. Fred, her sidekick.
Fred.
Fred's been in the other seasons. He's like this.
He has, yeah.
He kind of follows Nancy around, has a big crush on her, that sort of thing. But she was dating Steve, and then she was dating Jonathan, and he's like, but I'm right here. And he's a total nerd. He's the one who was in a car accident and lived from the car accident. And I can't remember. Was that last season? Or the season before?
I'm thinking the season before, but maybe not, yeah.
But so he goes with her to investigate out at the trailer park where Eddie lives because, you know, it's 1980s, and if you're white trash, like Eddie's supposed to be white trash, you're going to live in a trailer park. And nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying.
Hey, I grew up in a trailer too.
Yeah. But it's that very stereotypical kid, you know.
Well, those are the ones that are always judged.
They are. Max also lives in the trailer park.
Right.
Max and Lucas are no longer together.
Right. Well, and Max, you know, because of her brother dying, and her father or her stepfather leaves.
Yeah. So
her mom and her are on their own, and Mom's not dealing with it well.
No, Mom is an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like, plain and simple. Mom is an alcoholic. She's dealing with the fact that, yeah, she didn't get along with her stepbrother Billy, but she watched him die in front of her.
Right. And he saved her.
He saved her. Like, that last minute, like, what could have been if he lived? Like, would I have a big brother who loved me? That sort of thing. And this haunts her. But she watches Eddie run. Like, she lives like across, and so she sees Eddie show up with the cheerleader. She thinks it's weird.
Right.
Why is a cheerleader with Eddie?
And well, she's not feeding the dog, which is an interesting scene of its own.
Yes.
It's very, very reminiscent of an 80s horror flick with you're going out, the lights are flickering a bit, you're doing something like feeding the dog. Oh, yeah. It was perfect. It was perfect. And she sees Eddie leave. She knows Eddie's friends with Dustin and Lucas and Mike. Mm-hmm.
And instead of going to the cops, she goes to Dustin. I really love Dustin in this season. Like, I've always loved Dustin. I feel like he's the one, he always gives the monsters the names.
He does.
2, he's the, like, glue that keeps them all
together without
knowing it.
Right.
They don't he's friends with all of them, even when they're not necessarily friends with each other.
Right. That's true.
And so, like, Max has stepped away from Lucas. She stepped away from being friends with Mike. Like, I don't see a relationship with them at all. I don't see her communicating with Elle at all in this. I think that's one of the reasons Elle feels so isolated.
Right.
But she's still friends with Dustin. And so she goes to Dustin and she tells him what she saw and that she does not think that it was a natural thing.
Right. Because she's seen what happened last season.
Yes. And so they, of course, Dustin being Dustin, is like, we have to find him.
Right.
We have to protect him. we have to do whatever we can to clear his name because we know it's supernatural.
Right.
And so Dustin and Max join forces. Lucas is still celebrating his big win. Nobody in town really knows that the cheerleader died yet at this point. Lucas is still at a party. And so he's still out. And I love the separation of the group in this way. Mike is in California visiting Ellen, Will, and Jonathan. Nancy's back, and her and Jonathan are having issues. Robin and Steve are still really good friends. They work at the same movie rental place, which I love.
Right.
And Steve
but by the way, she stopped that at 55 minutes and 43 seconds. And I'm sitting there going, he's not wrong.
We're talking about Robin having a crush on a girl. Like, if the girl's a lesbian or not. And she's watching Fast Times at the time.
And she pauses the scene, the most famous scene in that movie.
Out of the swimming pool.
Out of the swimming pool. God bless Phoebe Cates. All right.
But Dustin and Steve, they're still friends, but Steve's a little jealous of Eddie.
Right.
Because, Steve's not in school. Steve graduated.
Yep.
Steve is working.
At the rental place.
At the video, isn't that the perfect place for them to work, though?
It is. It's very 80s there.
And it's so true because that's how they find Eddie.
Right.
They go and they're like, we have to find these people that Eddie hung out with. How can we do it? Everyone in a small town had a video rental store account.
Yeah.
One in the 80s.
Right.
You lived in a small town that only had like 1 or 2 channels. You were renting movies.
You were.
So they find
it was a big deal.
Yeah. They find Eddie. I love them explaining to Eddie the Upside Down. Didn't you love that scene?
Yes, I did.
Because you think to yourself, he's going to be like, yeah, no, you guys are crazy. But at this point, he's like, okay.
Right. Well, I just saw something I cannot explain on this girl dying, and I was not high at this point.
Right? He's like, and he's just like, okay. And that's when Dustin gives the name and everything. And
because Vecna was the name of the big bad that they're playing in D&D. Very reminiscent of season 1, where they named him the Demogorgon because that was the creature they were fighting in D&D. Right.
Yeah. I have this theory. Okay, this is off the rails. And I think Shpoo posted it on Facebook, but it is my theory. I'm just saying it's my theory. I was like, you know what I want? That not, because I know there's going to be a couple more seasons, or at least one more.
One more.
I want the very last episode to be a bunch of nerdy 40-something-year-old men, and Mike, Elle, Will are all characters in a D&D game based in the 80s.
I like it. I like it a lot.
A D&D game about kids that play D&D.
I like that a lot.
Wouldn't that be perfect?
It would be. I always kind of figured they would do this flash forward to current time with them playing D&D.
No, but I think it's
but as characters, I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah.
So, so they, they find some stuff. Of course, when Nancy and Fred go to investigate the murder, this is a big point. Eddie's uncle, who he lives with, gives her an idea of who could be doing it. Like, he has an idea. He has a theory of who killed this girl because he doesn't think his nephew did it.
Right.
That is Victor Creel.
Victor Creel.
Who is played by Freddie himself.
Yes, it is.
I love that. When they said that, I was like, oh God, please let me Robert Downey. Because I knew he was going to be in it. Like, it was announced he was going to be in the season. And I'm like, please let him be the murderer from the 50s. Like, who killed his family tortured them, took their eyes out, like, you know, that sort of thing. And he's in an insane asylum. It was very much like Silence of the Lamb, except they were sneaking in. So her and Robin sneak into the insane asylum, like lie. That was beautiful.
And I loved how they were trying to use their story and how they had a dress for this. It's like, I'm not gonna wear this.
Yeah, Robin is very like, she's like me in the 80s. Like, I'm like, I did not dress in the like shoulder pads and that prairie like weird bib dress. Just, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I know.
And like the button down, but it had like a weird square bit. Like, nope. And pastels, no, thank you. But she dresses like that, and she gets in there, and she's the one who gets them in to see.
She is,
because
she adapts things very quick.
She plays the feminist card.
Yeah.
Just because we're girls, if a guy came in, he could go stand.
Right.
But they go in and they talk to Victor, and Victor tells them a totally different story than him being the murderer.
Well, and him in the cage, you're right. It does have a Silence of the Lambs feel, but it also had a feel of the third Nightmare on Elm Street movie where they're in the insane asylum.
Yes.
It had a feel for that too, just a little bit, but enough to go, oh my gosh, that's crazy, right?
That's right.
And then of course you're talking about this house, which in the third Nightmare on Elm Street talks about Freddy's house.
Freddy's house. And Victor's house is basically, it's basically, he says that it was demonically possessed.
Right.
It was demonically possessed. The house killed his family, is what everybody says. He talks about his wife and his daughter. Now, he also had a son. He never mentions his son. I always, that's where my mind went, there's something about the son.
Right.
They talk about his wife being distorted and his daughter being distorted, and he literally gouged out his own eyes to like you know, try to join them because he wanted to join them. But he thinks the house did it.
Right.
But he's in the middle of this, and he's like, they're like, well, how did you escape it? And he's like, I heard a song.
Mm-hmm.
And what we forgot to mention is in episode 2, Max and them figure out that Fred, who was helping Nancy, he's murdered the same way, and Chrissy all have been going to the school counselor, which is also very Nightmare on Elm Street-ish.
It very much is, yes.
Because
even the high school after dark. And, yeah.
Because they've been having nightmares, and they've been having fear-driven anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and
even nightmares during the day.
Hallucinations during the day that they can't explain, which is all Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, very much so.
But Max has also been having these things. So they all go into, well, Nancy and Robin are dealing with Victor. They're going into the school to figure out what the connection is.
Right.
And Max figures out that, because she's seen this grandfather clock, and all Fred and Chrissy both had seen this grandfather clock, and they died the next day. So she knows that her time is close.
Limited. Yeah.
And I love the idea of the clock, because it's counting down to your death, like, which is also very Nightmare on Elm Street-ish, because you
very much
stay awake for so long.
Right.
Nighttime comes at some point. So, you know, they're separated at this point and everything. And it goes to Elle and Mike and Will, and they're roller skating.
The roller skating, which is phenomenal. And that roller rink was so perfect 80s,
it was
too.
Such an 80s roller rink.
Yeah.
perfect.
The video games over on the side you can play. You get the slushy place. You got the food court.
You have the DJ.
You get the DJ going. Everybody's kind of going in their own speeds around.
Middle is the faster. And
right. And people that are doing the turning around and skating and showing off all their great skating abilities, which I never could do any of that.
And Elle wants to be part of that group.
Right.
And she told Mike she's part of this group.
Right.
And so she has to go to this place. Of course, her bully's there, and she has already tried to, like you said, Elle her way out of it, basically, with no effect. And they make fun of this.
Right.
And they very much carry her. Does that make sense? Like, they treat her like Carrie.
Yeah, it's very much a Carrie sort of thing. Yeah, I agree. You get that feel. In fact, the whole incident at the roller rink has that definitely Carrie thing. We didn't mention it before, but before this, the mean cheerleading girl, Angela, makes fun of Elle's presentation she's trying to do, and she made this diorama, and she worked so hard on it. And she was just mean the whole way. And then she, of course, her and her friends knock it out of Elle's hands, step on it, break it, and that's where the scream comes in. But Elle's just devastated with that. So
it was a diorama of Hopper.
Right.
Of a hero. She had to do a historical hero.
Right, and it was her dad.
But Hopper, but you got to think she doesn't have a historical reference.
Right.
Like, she has the lab.
Right, exactly. What has she known?
Like there's no. So, but they make fun of her, and she goes a little psycho on them.
Well, in the teacher comes up and sees what had happened, and asks Elle, did she do this? And Elle won't answer her, but she goes and takes care of it anyway because she knows who the mean girl is. Oh, yeah. The teacher knows.
But they're over there laughing.
Right. So she gets consequences for that, but then they're blaming Elle for being a snitch when Elle didn't say anything. So that's what leads to the whole issues at the roller rink.
Yeah, and they make fun of Elle because Mike's her boyfriend, like, not making fun of Mike, but you got a cute little boyfriend, let's embarrass you in front of your boyfriend kind of thing.
Right.
And they take her out into the middle. Now Elle has told Mike that these are her friends, so he doesn't think anything's wrong with this. They take her out basically into the middle and embarrass her on a huge scale, and they pour milkshake all over her, which is very Carrie.
Knock her to the ground, the milkshake all over her, on her face, very much that Carrie thing with the blood.
Except Elle has no powers now.
Right.
And so she takes a roller skate.
Yeah, she comes up to the girl later. She's sulking about what happened because she's been embarrassed. Now Mike's going to know the truth and all this stuff. And she takes the roller skate and goes after the cheerleader. That was vicious.
Right there, and that's the other part of you see that Elle is not socially adept enough to live in this world right now.
Right.
She doesn't understand that you can't just use power now that she doesn't have power. You can't just take a roller skate and basically smash a girl's skull. She doesn't kill her.
Broke her nose.
And she has like this huge, it's just not good.
Even though I have to say I cheered when she did it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel bad, but way to go, Elle.
You feel bad, but you're like,
and you probably have the same experience. Having been bullied a lot, the idea that you could take a roller skate to their face. Oh, okay. Even at my age, I'm still like, that's still part of the fantasy for me. Her bashing her in the face fulfilled part of my fantasy.
See, and I cheered because it was Elle.
Right.
But I also knew there were going to be consequences. Elle doesn't realize there's consequences.
Right.
Like, she lived in a town where Hopper was the sheriff. He was the police chief. I mean, he was the boss. Anytime she lived there, like, she has never lived anywhere that she has not been protected.
Right.
There's consequences, and so of course Elle gets arrested. Did you ever think you would see Elle arrested?
No, that was wild. You're like, what? But yeah, I'm like, well, once she hit her, I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well at all because the mean girl knows how to work the system.
Yeah, and Joyce isn't there. Joyce and Murray have gone to Alaska to try to get the ransom paid to get Hopper back, and they're having to deal with Yuri, who is this crazy. He reminds me of Yakov Smirnoff.
Yes, he does.
He reminds me, like, Yakov from, like, Night Court. Remember when he was in Night Court?
Right. Yes, I do. Oh, yeah.
What a country, kind of Yakov. And Yakov lives, guys, I'm not making fun of Yakov because I've met the man. He has come into my work. We have interviewed him several times. He lives in Branson most of the time. And he's a wonderful man. So don't think I'm making fun of him. But it's very much that Russian comedy character that he used to play that made him famous, and now Yuri's doing that.
But with a twist.
I mean,
kind of a devious twist.
He's just greedy. He's a smuggler. He smuggles peanut butter.
Yeah, trusting a smuggler with $40,000 probably not the best idea, right?
So, but Joyce is gone, and so Jonathan is in charge, but he's not legally her brother. And even if he was legally her brother,
he's not a parent.
Not a parent. He's not 18. He's 17.
I thought he was 18. Is he not?
Okay, he's a senior. Him and Nancy are seniors, so he could be 18.
Yeah.
Because they're both planning to go to college. But
That's right. Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have custody of her.
Right.
George
does not.
Supposed to be back in a day or two. Like, she's not going to be gone a long time. And who would have thought Elle would have got arrested?
Right.
Luckily, Elle doesn't have to go to jail for long. Because Sam Owens gets her out.
Right.
Played by
yes. Polarizer.
Mad About You.
Love that show.
Yeah. Sam Owens, who has put her and Will and them in protective custody, basically, gets her out, but tells her that the world needs her again.
Right.
Like, they know something bad is going on. And she's like, I have no powers. And he's like, I have a way to get you your powers back.
Right.
But you have to trust me. He's not the bad guy. He works for the bad guys. Like, he works in that circle of bad guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he actually, I think, cares about her.
Right.
Like, I think he cares about her, but he works in that circle of
bad guys. You almost get the feel his character is somewhat similar to his character from Aliens.
Yes. Which is also great because 80s.
Right, exactly. Because you're like, he's doing what he can, but when it comes down to it, he's,
Well, and again, Elle's been having these dreams, nightmares, Nightmare on Elm Street kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
About her past and everything. And she has no powers, and so she doesn't want her friends to get hurt. He tells her friends in Hawkins are in danger.
Right.
And that is the one thing about Elle, is these are her family now. She's going to protect them. But
she's Stitch.
Family means no one gets left behind.
Or forgotten.
But she goes off with him
to
train at the Nina project, and she leaves Mike a note. But Mike and Jonathan and Will are now under guard.
Right.
Felt weird. I felt like that was a weird thing.
Well, but it is that classic kind of 80s, the cops are protecting you sort of mantra, where those cops are going to die. I mean, it's just what happened.
I was going to say, the cops you're under house arrest and the cops are protecting you. The bad guys are going to come and destroy your house and kill the cops.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much. I mean, Lethal Weapon. I mean, whatever you want to say here, pretty much they're all there. So, 80s cop movies. It played that perfectly.
Oh yeah, Argyle, who we love, saves the day by delivering a pizza. Kind of like they think.
Yeah, because there's a bad guy in the military who thinks Elle's a threat.
Which she is.
She is at a level, but she's also the best hope. It's kind of like, any sort of weapon or anything else can be used for good or evil, depending on who has their...
Now she's Anakin Skywalker, but she has the potential to turn to Darth Vader.
It's true. That's very true. So he wants her taken out. Yeah. And he's been looking for her. And that's actually how we got Paul back into the picture there, was because of that. So, but they find where she's supposed to be living, and they come in, and so you have military people coming in, and you have a couple of guys that are helping try to watch the kids and protect them, and they're surprised by this attack on the house, and luckily they'd already called Argyle to deliver a pizza, so that the kids were able to escape out to get in his van to run away from him.
Right.
So, yeah.
I seriously, though, okay, so it reminded me of Firestarter.
Yes.
In this, that they are hunting this child down.
Yeah.
Has powers, which was, I really love that Stephen King throw in there.
Yep.
Also,
Drew Barrymore.
Oh, she was way too young at that time.
I'm just saying, I was young when I saw it.
But I love that feel of it. It's also very E.T.-like.
Yes, very much so.
Because they're a group of kids escaping the government.
Very much so, yes.
Argyle is the E.T. bike. They're out of there. But no, I just love these like hints about, you can pick up on these things that are very 80s.
Yeah, very much so.
In this, and even more so, I think, in this season. I think this season, last season, had a lot of 80s pop culture.
Yep, it did. It did.
This season feels like throwback to 80s movies.
Yeah, very much so.
Like really major like plots from 80s movies are coming into this. They go off. They have the one guy with them. One of the FBI agents or the agents or whatever organization he is with, because they don't actually say what organization he is with, who got shot, who's going to die. You know he's going to die. But he hands them a pen and says he's going to give them a number to where Elle is, and then he dies.
Right.
And
not so helpful.
Not so helpful, because like Mike's like, he didn't even give me I couldn't write it down. And Argyle is like trying to write a headstone for him out of a pizza off a pizza box because they're burying him. And the pen's not working. And Mike goes, dude, he didn't even give me a pen that could work. I couldn't have written it down anyway. And then click, in his head, he's like, oh, maybe the pen has a secret message in it.
Which is such a 80s spy movie trope right there.
So I actually went to Goonies in my head with that.
Yeah.
Because, secret codes, kids on a mission, like the grown-up is dead, the grown-up to protect them is not there.
Right.
They're running from these people, but they have a mission. They need to find this location, this map location of their treasure, which is Elle Elle is their treasure. So I went totally Goonies in my head.
It's an interesting way to go with it. I like it though. Yeah.
You know how my mind works.
I know.
It's
it's a plethora of labyrinths and mazes in there.
I tell people my mind is like giant. This is how I picture my mind. When people ask me a question about something, especially like a movie or something, it's like a giant filing cabinet.
Yeah.
That, you know, the Bruce Almighty filing cabinet that comes out and it just. Woo!
Yep.
Yeah, that's how my mind works. Everything's gonna.
My mind is more like the labyrinth from Labyrinth. So you got to kind of find things where you're supposed to go. You're just going to fall into some stuff. I mean, that's how my mind works.
And I'm the one who like would listen to the little worm and just keep going straight. Well, she's gone. You're like, I'll go this way then. Never go that way. And you're like, okay. I would have been like, which way should I go?
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for a labyrinth kind of feel for these. Well, that would be good.
That would be good. I agree.
We're only on episode like 3.
Right. And we're an hour and almost 15 minutes in.
No. Do you think we should like stop there?
Well,
and
we
talk about this again next week.
We could definitely do part 2 with it next week. Yeah.
Because there's so much. I don't want. There are so many things that I picked up on, and I don't want them to kind of get lost.
Right. I'm with you. No, I'm cool with that too. Yeah, we can definitely pick up again next week with it from here, because we've got the introduction stuff done, and then what was going on. So there's the basis that people know there's a big bad and very Freddy-esque and
and the fact that Robert was in this just adds to that. So you can kind
most definitely.
Also, the one thing I haven't mentioned is that Jason, who's the basketball captain, has found out that his girlfriend is dead.
Right.
She died in Eddie's house. He doesn't think she would have been buying drugs because she didn't do those things.
Right.
And so he's going to go after Eddie. And Lucas is with him at the time. And so Lucas actually goes after Eddie with them, but kind of playing a double agent, if you will.
Right.
But he doesn't want Dustin or Max, especially Max, to get hurt. He doesn't want Eddie to get hurt. He's friends with Eddie, too.
Right. Well, and very much he's trying to stay with the KOOL group, so he's trying to do what he can to be with the KOOL group, but also still trying to warn the group that they're after him, so...
Yeah, and he reminded me of the Jock and Crybaby, the Square and Crybaby. Like, going after, like, anyone who is different than him.
Right.
Perfect, you know, and
right.
everything. But that's really important for the next couple episodes. For all the things that you have to realize that he's got a gang of basketball players, basically.
Right.
Following
him. And the popularity to convince people of things.
He's the way he speaks and the way he talks reminds me of an 80s televangelist.
Oh, wow, yeah.
He's like, he has that command of like people and like that you just want to believe him. He's so wholesome.
Right.
I mean, we know how half the 80s evangelists turned out not to be wholesome.
Well, and we just saw a big party, kegger with him. And Luca's first time getting sick from alcohol because it's the first time he went to a party and all that. So, yeah.
But it's very much, he is the typical, I want to be the hero.
Right.
He's a little bit of a zealous. Not a lot, but he quotes the Bible like a couple times.
He does.
Which is not typical of a teenage jock. Like, in my head, I just don't think most teenage jocks don't quote the Bible to their friends.
Well, I think he's using it the way he wants to, because from looking at it, what I'm seeing it is he he likes to have the reputation of being the good boy. So he goes to church, he's memorized some of these verses, but he uses them at opportune times, especially when he's talking to people that are older than him, adults, that he's trying to manipulate.
And that's why he reminds me of an 80s
Yeah. I mean, you can see that with, jocks a lot of times, and it's true with the Mean Girls too. They know how to play the system.
Oh, yeah.
And they know who they're talking to, and so they know how to get away with it. Whereas as nerds and geeks, for whatever reason, we're smarter than them, but we don't know how to play that system as well.
We're so bad at manipulation.
Yeah, right? And they were so good at it. So,
it's very charismatic, and that's what
very charismatic.
It's very charismatic. I mean, even Lucas, you're unsure if Lucas where he falls at the beginning when he starts going with them.
Right.
Don't think Lucas is ever going to turn on Dustin or Max, because he still has feelings for Max. But
when he snuck into his house to try to radio them to let them know what was going on.
Right. But that's before they take off. Like,
right.
When they take off, you're at that point where you're like, I hope he's not going to go there. But
because he makes the statement that I know where Eddie is. Yeah. You're like, oh, is he going to betray him? Just to, oh.
Yeah, and so it's kind of that thing. Lucas reminds me, another 80s throwback. Lucas's character this season reminds me of Michael J. Fox's character in Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to be popular.
Right.
Like, he's got this nerdy girl who likes him and he likes her. However, she's having her own issues. Like, let's not get it. Max is the one who broke up with him. But he also wants to be popular.
Right. And he says that in the first season. It's like, you guys want to just hang out with all these losers all the time? Don't you want more? And they're like, these are our people. What are you talking about?
Yeah, because Dustin is very confident in who he is.
Right.
I am who I am.
Dustin always has been.
Oh, yeah. Mike is portrayed as the leader, but he's not. Dustin's the leader.
Right.
Mike is just the one who gets the girl. And Will is that sensitive one. He is that, empathetic one. That's why they had him in the Upside Down for so long. Is because he's the heart of the group.
Right.
And Dustin, though, is the leader. And Lucas is the brave one, but at the same time, he's also the one that wants more out of his life.
Right.
And that's why he reminds me of Michael J. Fox's character in Teen Wolf.
That's a good analogy. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm all full of analogies.
I love it.
Did you think this would go so much into 80s movies?
I didn't, but I knew how much it kind of went into culture and stuff last year, so I wasn't surprised. But I was like, man, this is linking to this movie. Oh wow, that links kind of over to here, and so you're just pulling stuff, going, wow.
Yeah, it's very, and if you love 80s movies, it has hit so many, and we're gonna, like, in the next week we'll talk about episodes or chapters. They call them chapters.
They do call them chapters.
4, 5, 6, and 7, and there's way more movies that are thrown in there.
I agree. Well, now for people that have not watched it,
you have a chance.
You do. You have a chance. Also realize this season's has a lot of graphic violence. The deaths are pretty gruesome. It's very much a horror-esque season. So it is
a Nightmare on Elm Street season.
So be prepared if you've not seen it, that you know what you're getting into. Season 3 had a lot of kind of gross, and it was more the monster like the Thing and stuff like that was what that reminded me of last season. So each season's kind of a little different on how your monsters are and kind of the graphicness of it. But this season's full on. This is, people dying graphically on screen. Oh, yeah. So So make sure you're okay before you go watch it. I do recommend it. I love it. So, but I just want to make sure people know what they're getting.
If you have little ones,
Yeah.
this is nightmare inducing. It is
Yeah.
a Nightmare on Elm Street themed show. And when I say that, and when you watch this, you will be like, oh my gosh, it really is. But they make no doubts about it, especially in chapter 2 when you actually see Robert
Right.
on screen. You know, at that moment, you're like, even if you, I knew before this, but even if you don't know before that, at that moment, you're like, this is a Freddy Krueger Stranger Things season.
Right.
That's what it is. It is nightmares. It is based on subconscious murders. Like he gets into your mind and kills you in the upside down, but you die in the real world.
Right.
Like Freddy kills you in your dreams, but you die in the real world. And you die the same way Freddy kills you. And that is what happens with this. So, it's very gruesome. It has the first kill scene with Chrissy, the cheerleader, that sets up the rest of the season. If you can't deal with that one, then I would suggest you probably can't deal with that.
I found it interesting because you do, and I'm not sure when this started, but you start seeing characters interact in their kind of dream or subconscious with other people.
Yeah.
And interacting in such a way that was very much a Freddy thing too, where he'd kind of disguise himself and then come out as Freddy. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. And then kind of when you're in the upside down, how things are, how the clock is flying over here and the house is in pieces here.
It's all broken.
It is.
Which is very unusual for the upside down, because the upside down usually just is exactly opposite.
Right.
Black and white, darker, it's grittier, that sort of thing. Because there's no light, because it's upside down. But his house, the house that Victor Krill's family died in, which is the house. It's the house in this thing. It's the Freddy Krueger house. Is not in our world. It is whole.
Right.
They go to it.
What episode is that they go to that? So,
hold on just a minute. It is Dear Billy, so it's chapter 4.
So that'll be next on the list. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. But the house the house in the upside down is broken up, and it's But you did bring up a good point, because Chrissy, the Vecna comes into Chrissy's hallucination, nightmare, subconscious, whatever you want to call it, as her mother.
Right.
Comes into Fred's subconscious as the boy who died in the car accident.
Right.
And we've told you that Max is now seeing Vecna, and you can just imagine it's going to be Billy, because that's who she is grieving over. That's who her trauma is about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really based on that. And I really think it's my favorite season so far.
Oh, it's an amazing season. I'm really loving it. So, I'm with... Yeah, it probably is my favorite, but man, they're also good. Yes, very much so. Well, I do too.
I know.
So but it's fascinating for sure. The we didn't get to talk about Kate Bishop, but that'll be next week. So because I'm running up that hill.
I know. There are so many things, though, guys. It's amazing. But yes, the professor's right. If you don't like movies like Nightmare on Elm Street, still watch this, but be aware that it has some similarities and there are some gruesome deaths. It's not quite
during the daylight.
Yeah, right. It's not quite as many gruesome deaths as like you would expect in a horror movie, like one an episode. Just one episode. That's nothing, unless you count all the children dying in the first episode.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's like.
Which we come back to later.
Yes, we do. Dreams. Dream. So yeah, we'll do chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7 next week, because there was just so many hidden Easter eggs. And
most definitely.
uh,
Yeah, it's definitely worth a second half to go to. So yeah, we'll check us out next week. We will talk about part 2 of our review, and then of course, was it July 1st where episodes 8 and 9 drop?
yes, I'm pretty sure. So
it's early July. I think it's July 1st. So looking forward to it. I don't know how you watched it, but I watched it all in the first weekend.
I did not watch it the first weekend. We had things that I had to do for work.
You did.
But we did when you were talking about wanting to do this, and it was on our list. We pushed it up on our list a little bit so that we could talk about this. But we did sit and watch. Me and Shabu watched the whole 7 episodes in one setting.
Yeah, I didn't do it in one setting, but I did it over the course. And I didn't start till Saturday night, but I got done with it because that was Memorial Day weekend. So I started watching it Saturday night. I stayed up too late watching some of them. Then Sunday had stuff going on. We had people over. And so I watched an episode before people came over. So excited about it. When they left, I watched another episode. Then I watched another episode. And I'm like, I can't stay awake any longer. Went to bed and got up the next morning and watched the last 2. Like, oh my gosh.
So we planned, this is how great my husband is about this. Because he loves this show. He actually, you and him are the ones that got me into this show. But what's great about when we have shows like this that hit all at once, and that's what we will make day out of it.
I like that.
And we literally sat and we'll have breakfast together while we watch it. And then we will take like a break around lunchtime, and he comes and does his thing back here in the studio, and I usually work on some stuff for work. And then we'll come back and we'll have dinner and watch it for the rest of the time. And so we watched it. It was a whole day. We took a couple breaks, and then we finished it at like 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
So, but this gives you guys a whole week to watch episodes 1, chapters 1 through 7, and you kind of know what's going to happen in 1 through 3 now if you haven't seen it. But trust me, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So much more happens, and so much more unexpected things happen.
And there wasn't any, sometimes in shows like this, you get like a buffer episode or something where things just kind of sit still for a moment. You kind of build some character. There's none of that. This is just full on pressing through.
Yep. There's really none of that at all.
No.
It's all nonstop. So next week we'll just do like tiny little recaps of what happened in episode 3, so that you guys know where we are, and then we'll start episode 4, 5, 6, and 7. Sound good, Professor?
Sounds perfect to me.
Okay. Well, before we leave, I did a lot of the talking today. I'm sorry, Professor.
You did great. Don't apologize. I like it when you do a lot of the talking.
I get excited.
Well, I understand. I do too. And this show excites me, so
next week I'll let Professor talk.
Oh, well, whatever, You got things broke down better than I do. I'm like, it's fun. I like the, and you know me, which is interesting because I'm not a big horror guy, but I love the show.
I know. I'm shocked that you like season 4 as much as you do, because you're not a big horror guy. But.
Now, as far as horror genre goes, I have to say the Nightmare on Elm Street ones I liked better because I thought it was more suspenseful, psychological than just some guy with a knife running around or an axe running around.
You're not a slasher movie kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm not a slasher movie guy at all. So
well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. If you like what we do, you'll like what our friends do as well. And we have so many great nerdy friends who do some of these things as well. And we like to throw out their names so that you guys know where to go. So the first one, Professor, are you going to do this, or you want me to?
I'll pull them up.
Cool. First one is the Ozpod Gals over on Facebook. and they go live usually on Thursdays at 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
But they have busy lives and stuff, so sometimes they pre-record. But go check them out. They're fun. They're entertaining. If you like watching cute, nerdy girls talk about all kinds of nerdy, fun things, that's the show for you because they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous.
They're a lot of fun. They're just a lot of fun.
They're so fun. But go check them out. Hit like while you're over there, and follow their page because they're going to have some really cool things. They are also part of OzCon, which is West Plains Convention, and so they're going to have some things on conventions. They go to a bunch of things like that, so be sure to check them out. Then we have our friends Gary and Keith.
What?
See, go say hi to our friends, Keith and Gary, over at Pop Culture Mindfield on YouTube. Keith and Gary have lots of shows.
They have lots of shows, which is great. They're immensely popular. We envy their popularity.
So much.
Yeah.
But they know everyone, and they know so much about what's going on behind the scenes of movies and in Hollywood and in comics and all of that. And so they get some great insights. They get some great guests. And they have several different shows that they split this up into. Some single shows with just Gary, some shows with Keith, but they come together on Pop Culture Mindfield, and that's on YouTube. They also are on Facebook.
Yes, they are.
So be sure to go hit like on Facebook, hit subscribe, and like on YouTube. Comment. They would love to hear what you guys have to say. Just be aware they are more PG-13. 80s PG-13?
Definitely 80s PG-13, yeah. Which, by the way, today is R, just so those of you that don't know.
They tend to, and it's language, it's just about language. They don't do anything inappropriate.
They're not 80s PG-13 boob scene every episode, no. like 16 Candles and whatever.
But they do have language, so be aware if you have small children that you don't want them to hear the language, just pop those headphones on and go ahead and give them a listen because they have some great insights and they're hilarious.
They are. They're great guys.
Keith, who is part of us, he comes on here all the time. He's part of GeekyKOOL, but he also has his own show over on the Fat Stevens the Gold channel on YouTube, and that's Mondays at 3:00. He just talks about all kinds of things. He went through episode by episode of Babylon 5, and telling you behind the scenes stuff and things most people don't even pick up on. So he is on there. It's called Keith Chimes In, and it's amazing. So go over and check that out. Hit subscribe as well, like and comment. Okay, then we have who Professor calls the DC. Our distinguished competition.
Our distinguished competition.
And that is our nerd informant, Tim and Josh, over on YouTube and Facebook, Twitter as well. And they are amazing and fun. They give movie reviews, and Josh gets some great interviews with some amazing actors and actresses who are hot in Hollywood right now. It's called Hollywood Calling, and they share that as well on their page. But go check them out, hit subscribe, tell them that we sent you, because I love Timmy. I work with him, and if you guys say I sent you, he'll say something about it.
See, there you go.
It's a thing. It's a
it
thing.
Is.
But the Nerd Informants have done something that is really great for the nerd community, and that is the Nerd Informants Beyond. It's a Facebook page where all nerds, every geek, can share their own things on that page. They can share memes. They can share if they're selling things, if they have a con coming up, any of that stuff. That's where you can go share it and share it with your fellow nerds who love you and understand and who embrace you as part of their community. We love that. Then there's Gallywag himself. That is Gallywag Productions on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. He's everywhere.
He's everywhere.
Yes. He does a collectible of the day. As you can see behind me, there are hundreds and hundreds of collectibles. He posts a collectible of the day on Instagram. He's got videos that he's he's actually editing right now, so he'll be doing videos again. And him and I have a project that we are working on. We're thinking about doing a podcast for a thing that an idea I came up with that I thought would make either a great comic book or TV show, but we're going to do it as a podcast.
There you go. I'm loving it. I can't wait to watch it. Yeah.
Oh, we need voice actors for that. So you're going to.
Whoa. All right. Because I've the face for radio.
Well, it's a podcast, so.
Right.
But, while you're over scrolling the internet, I can't do this as well as my husband. And he's here, but he's like out there somewhere. But check us out on GeekyKOOL.com. We're also on Facebook and YouTube. You're watching us on one of those. Get us a like, subscribe, comment. We love comment. Tell us what you want us to talk about. But check out our website because we have amazing contributors who write all kinds of articles. We share trailers, all of those things. And we have contributors who are very anime heavy. We have horror, we have authors, we have comic book lovers, and then we have people like me and Larry who are kind of like all over the place.
I love it all. Give me it all.
But and we have contributors from all over the country, all different ages and races and sexes, and so it's very diverse. If you want to be a contributor, let us know, and we'll make that happen. So how's that?
That's perfect. So hopefully you guys can come over, check us out, and now that I'm finally back in action, be able to make sure we've got stuff up and running smoothly, and get all. No, you guys did great. I appreciated everything you guys all did. So you guys are awesome.
Our professor. We need our professor to
I'm back, baby. I'm back. So we will make sure we've got things going updated over there. Come check us out. And until next week when we talk about episodes 4 through 7, stay geeky and we'll see you then.